Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Dr. Alan Hyde, and I'm joined by our co-host here, Don Radin, with Recovered and Free. We're going to get into a discussion today about the family disease of addiction and how that said family recovers after it's been impacted by addiction and codependency. We're going to get into defining all of these terms, talking about all of these concepts as we do on this show. But as always, Don, welcome, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Always good to work with you on these, and always have a blast doing them.
Yeah.
Because this is a huge topic.
Yeah.
So many people just think, well, if the addict just gets well, everything else will fall into place. If you'll just stop using, if you'll just stop drinking, right, that everything will just be so much better.
Yeah. I used to think the same thing. And I tell my clients this too, is like, I was a therapist for many years before a really seasoned therapist bonked me over the head and got me into the program of Al-Anon to help me see like how to detach, how to let go, how to give that other person and other people in my life struggling with addictions or their own struggles dignity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it opened up a world of like, just the ongoing peace in that to be able to give somebody the dignity and respect,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what they're struggling with. Um, it's not a novel idea, but it is a challenging one for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, so at Recovered and Free, we incorporate some of the, it's not really CODA work, which is Codependence Anonymous, but it's along those lines because my experience is that most addicts or alcoholics are codependent as well.
Mm.
And most alcoholics and addicts feel like if I just address the alcohol problem or the drug problem, then my life will be better. And again, it does get better. But when I personally went through the work myself, looking at it from taking drugs and alcohol out of step one and putting people, right? Trying to control and enjoy people. When I try to get outcomes from other individuals and I don't get them, I get disturbed. Well, what is that? That's the illusion of control,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure we'll get into those later, but it was mind blowing to me because part of the 12-step process in the 10th step is that we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when these crop up, that we address them. But why do I have those? Why do I experience those? It's not around drugs and alcohol. When I recover from this, it's around people.
Yeah.
I get disturbed around people.
Yeah.
And so, coming from the addict side, I would say that all the men that I've had the pleasure of working with all qualified to work through the people problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one aspect of why we call it the family disease. Everyone's affected,
Right.
including the addict, by the relational issues. And one of the ways that I always heard it described to me in the realm of codependency, I think a lot of times our society has a misunderstanding through misrepresentation of what codependency is.
Right.
There's an aspect of it that you'll see all over the internet and in pop culture society, which is an enmeshed relationship. These two individuals cannot get off of each other. They can't leave each other alone. They do everything together. They can't be on their own. And one of the ways I always describe it is that that's like you have a tree and you peel a piece of bark off the tree, and that piece of the bark that is codependency, let's say the tree is codependency, that piece of bark is an enmeshed relationship. But there's so much more going on. And one of the best understandings that I operate with is that codependency has roots that go deep into our experience, and those roots fall under really four main categories, right? That being abuse, right? So physical, sexual, verbal, spiritual, financial, all the forms of abuse, abandonment, neglect, and shame. Right. And so it's like, someone comes in, they start in treatment and they're trying to work on their addiction and they're monkey branching, jumping on the branches, trying to chop off these branches that aren't working, but they never get to the roots. And so I'll always ask clients, like, what do you think happens when you chop one branch off and you go to the next one? right? And you get a lot of different answers of, the tree dies or this kind of stuff. But the real answer is that by the time you get to the other branch, the one you just chopped off is already growing back. Right?
Yeah, I liken it to a weed. You can pull the top of the weed off all day long.
Yeah.
Come back next week and the weed is grown back again. It's got to be addressed from the root.
Yeah.
And, I don't believe that addiction is causal, but I do believe that there's usually some factor in someone's life that initiates that first drink or that first hit on a joint or whatever. For me, it was on the abuse side. I grew up in a pretty sick family, and nothing goes outside of the house, and we're going to present like we're, the Cleaver family. But that's what caused me to pick up. But that didn't make me an addict or an alcoholic. It just set off that allergic reaction in motion that sets me apart from other people who drink and use for whatever reason, social events, social lubricant, maybe to knock the edge off their week or loosen up as a tool.
Yeah.
But that root that you're talking about, I believe that's inherent in everyone.
Yeah.
Across the board on the planet. Codependency isn't new, that idea. In fact, everyone on the planet is codependent, maybe not to the degree that it's destructive.
Yeah, I think.
But I depend on the waiter or wait staff to take my order and then get the food that I ordered.
Right. Well, yeah, the assessment piece is neuroticism. How neurotic has this experience become? One of the better ways to put that, just for like to chew on in the noggin, is how much distress is this causing you, whether you know it or not. So a lot of forms, like people will come into the therapeutic environments and it's been recommended by others consistently enough that they'll come in, or they have noticed enough in and of themselves. It really doesn't matter the level of deep awareness right off the rip when someone comes in to work on it. It hasn't been presented to you. I have this conversation with a lot of family members once we kind of develop and understand and get them resources of, I highlight when we're doing some of the family tree work, that program, as well as like therapeutic interventions, have been around long enough that our parents' generation and their parents' generations have been exposed to the work. And even before that, we could look at spiritual doctrines and texts that the work has been presented. And what we can be reasonably, if not certain of, but reasonably certain, is that they were presented with the same work to do, and they said no. Right? And that's why we're sitting in these rooms, is because, well, we've decided to say yes, and that doesn't make us better. It just, means that maybe our society has gotten to a place of deeper awareness, and that individual is ready for whatever reason. But the family member in the generational line before, if you're being presented with it, was presented with the work for whatever shape or fashion, and they said no, dependent upon the level of distress, right? So, you can even see this in families where the previous generation said yes, right? And the distress is lower, but it's enough for them to do some work. So there's a varying degree. It's an intricate web. It can get really confusing. But to give the clarity, is a piece you were touching on, which is the general concept of codependency exists. Let's just take Western culture, for example, exists at a base. It's everywhere. Shame is everywhere. It's why these conversations tend to strike chords so deeply. It's why all of our movies and media focus around these underdog stories, right? Abuse is everywhere, right? Kids are getting abandoned and neglected all over the place, right? So our society is deeply affected. We just have, I think, at a flyby, a misunderstanding of what's going on. So then it does become the discussion of, addiction is causal, right? No, addiction is a symptom, right? The substance use is a symptom of a much deeper issue.
Well, and we've talked about this before, trauma being the new catchphrase of, the clinical world on addiction. And Unfortunately, that is not the causation of addiction or alcoholism. My twin brother grew up in the exact same house, and he's not an alcoholic or an addict. He drinks successfully, whatever that means. For it, he doesn't drink like I do, and so you couldn't get a better test subject than twins
Yeah.
that have the same family dynamics, same educational system, same cute little matching outfits that my mom made us wear, and yet I do believe that he's got his own issues to deal with.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when an alcoholic or an addict finds recovery, there's deeper levels of this, right? And even the big book, which is considered the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous, is, and it even says so in the foreword of the first edition, that we know only a little. That God will constantly disclose more to you and to us, and so it goes deeper, and it speaks to that the closer I get to seeing God's face, the farther I see I've got to go. And these hurts, these old hurts, and and the fear of the future, what could or possibly happen, is driving men and women into all sorts of obsessive neuroses, right? Like, and some of them are even applauded, like workaholism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although there's complete avoidance of the family that they're making these sacrifices for, right? The family is yearning for a father or a husband in the picture, but they're always at work making money. And again, you're a great provider. Yeah. And what the children really need is to be provided what the example of a man is in society and in their family life.
Yeah. It's like when the distress and desperation reached its boiling point for me, one of the ways I relay it is I wasn't abusing substances. All right. If you looked at me from the outside, you would have seen a young man somewhere in his mid-20s, good career, owns his car, has a nice place to live, food in his stomach, 3 meals a day, right? Just making it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the part that I didn't show anyone was how isolated I was, that every interaction with my family was a fight, And I relay it like this, is like those fights, my willingness or willfulness in my interactions with my family to fight with them, to constantly be the one who had to be right, was going to kill me. Mm-hmm. It was going to stress me into an early grave, right? And one of the best kind of nuggets in that is that anything that's a distraction from God, and this is where people get up in arms, right? Good, orderly direction. Anything that's a distraction from your higher power is designed to kill you. It doesn't matter if it's the hobby that you spend all your time doing and you spend all your finances on it and then you're in a hard up spot. It doesn't matter if it's a substance illicitly that you're abusing. It doesn't matter if it's self-isolation or constant fights with your family members. Whatever it is that moves you away from your deepening of a relationship with your higher power is designed to kill you. And it wins 100% of the time.
Yeah, sex, smoking, food, gambling, process addictions like video games, social media is destroying and separating so many people. That image that you were talking about, the image management of presenting to the outside world how perfect your life was, but no one knew about the fights. Right. Well, that's a Facebook life, right? That's a fake book life. If you look at my Facebook, you'll see the same thing. I'm not posting videos of my wife's being wrong. I mean, us arguing and me later discovering that she's right. Yeah. But, I'm not posting that up. It's the smiles and the happiness and the, but that is, I think it's been true forever.
in society, but certainly with the advent of social media, I mean, we're not even interacting with people presenting that image.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a breakdown on a research article earlier this morning, actually, when I was working on some stuff in the office, and it was basically highlighting that in the modern age, even though we're heavily connected, there's something like, in their research article, it was something like 300 million people reporting that they had no friends. All right. Now, that's a continuum. That's a spectrum, right?
Sure.
What does no friends mean? It's a pretty subjective. I'll take a lot of these things with a grain of salt, but what you can notice with social media, and I think just kind of the increases in the family disease of addiction and the disproportionate amount of people who are struggling versus those who receive the support they need, kind of just highlight this ever isolated society afflicted by codependency. A better way to put that would be the family disease of addiction, and a huge stigma that we've touched on before around, well, what is addiction and how are the family members affected? And no, I'm fine, they're the fucked up one. I mean, that's the conversation. And people get isolated if those are the conversations. They just do. They don't sit down like this with an intention to talk about how the family heals afterwards from the perspective of a family member who has an addict loved one and someone in recovery from substance use. Society doesn't sit there. They're at odds with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And that's true even in the recovery world.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm always going to refer back to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is, again, the directions on how to get well. For someone who has gone down that path, is that, we're encouraged to work with the families. And that's not happening today. What's happening today is, I'll sponsor you, I'll take you through the steps, but, as far as sitting down with your family member, no, that's for other people to do. And I believe that, like, if I was working with someone professionally or personally, my volunteer work in 12-step world is that I would refer them to you, even as just a straight 12-stepper, not as a professional therapist, or because I know that you've gone through the 12 steps of Al-Anon and you worked that program, and you'd be better suited to work with the family, but I would have that as a resource. I wouldn't just be, well, we'll worry about you. We'll just worry about you. This is so far reaching. In fact, full transparency, in this last 8 years of recovery, a few years ago, I was at a breaking point of suicide. And it was an ugly, ugly scene in my house. And that was all behind what we're talking about, the family illness. I wasn't drinking or using. It didn't even come to my radar. It didn't hit my radar at all to drink or to use. But swallowing a bullet, that seemed like a viable option. Yeah. And then I sat down and I started really digging into this codependency work, and really looking at the core issue of why I was so unhappy. And, it's a constant struggle because, when you're working with codependency and you're really looking at that, relapses happen daily, 100 times a day. With an alcoholic or an addict, it's, got to change the sobriety date, got to go get a new chip, and all the, these wonderful traditional, I think sometimes demeaning processes, but with that P. Yeah. Is that you don't. It may be so subtle that no one else notices how I'm relapsing in my codependency. Yeah. Right? Because it's my thought process. It's what's happening behind the eyeballs that no one else knows. Well, she doesn't love me because she didn't do this. Or He doesn't like me. I went, into a room full of 100 people and said hi, and 99 said hi back, and I'm disturbed about the one who didn't hear me.
Yeah.
But I think, oh, it's personal.
Yeah.
So the subtlety and a lot of the illness of codependency looks like nobility, right? The mother who doesn't give up on the son, even though it's destroying her marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And the son just keeps lying and manipulating and using mom's illness against her. And I don't mean evilly, I don't mean intentionally being evil, but the illness of addiction doesn't care about anyone, including mom.
Right.
So if it can take advantage of mom, the loved one, of course, doesn't want to do it, feels guilt and shame for doing it, but still does it because the illness is running the show.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it time and time and time and time again, and not just the mom. I've seen codependent dads that, they're sacrificing everything for Junior,
Yeah.
and it looks noble. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're never giving up. That's way to go. Yeah. When really, I keep driving nails in the coffins of the people that I love, and I'm going to literally love them to death.
Yep. Yeah. It's a line I often use with family members is you absolutely can love your son, your daughter, your husband, your brother. You can love them into the grave. Mm-hmm. The focus has to be where we have some control. And this is what AA teaches. This is what Al-Anon teaches. You have control over your own life. Outside of that, it becomes unmanageable really quick. We live in a society that, granted, you can have some influence, right? Because we're in a free society. There are places in the world right now where they are not free and they do not have that luxury. And you find out a whole lot about control in those kind of environments. And if you're confused, just pick up a book and read it. One that I always recommend is The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. If you want a perspective shift on your life and your freedoms and what you can and can't control, that is the book to read. But our recovery, it teaches us to place our perspective on where we have some control over our own lives, right? I did not have the boundaries. I thought I did, but what I had were really strict rules that were actually very biting and mean to family members who I was never going to actually hold a boundary for myself with, right? So as much as I thought I had the rules, I was there engaging in the shit and putting up with and tolerating the misbehavior because I thought I had something to do with it. I was telling my partner this the other night of like, I'll never be able to fully relay, and I trust that she understands where I'm coming from, but I can never really be able to fully express to somebody what you were saying a moment ago of like why everyone in my life can tell me, look me in the eyes and say, Alan, I really like you and I really appreciate you and you're just easy to love. I mean, I've heard that message actually often quite consistently of like, you're easy to love. And I could never express to someone why there's that voice in the back of my head that will always tell me that that's a flat out lie, why I'm unlovable, you know? And I can't blame anybody for that. Maybe when I was a minor, you know, there might have been someone to blame. But as soon as you're an adult, and this is what I've come to terms with in my recovery, as soon as I step into my adulthood, if I want to get better, I can't blame any of those people anymore. Did they have a role and a factor in that? Sure. But if I continue to blame them for it, I'll never get better, you know? And I wasn't getting better until I owned it for myself.
Right.
I'm the one who believes that I'm unlovable, right? Not the person who showed me with their behaviors that they thought I was unlovable, right?
Right.
It's not on them anymore. It's on me.
Well, that brings, to the top of my mind, I heard a clear definition that I really have, attached myself to on the difference between boundaries. I thought boundaries are what I will and will not tolerate for myself, what I will and will not engage in for myself. And rules are what you're doing. So if you bring alcohol into this house or drugs into this house, you got to go. That's a rule. It's not a boundary. That's a rule. A boundary is when you're drinking, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to do other things. When you get loud and argumentative, I'm going to disengage. I'm not saying don't stay loud and argumentative. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to be here for you to do it with.
Yeah.
And you know, this, you're bringing to mind so many things. There's another fellowship out there called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And I'll tell you, the first step chapter just smashed on me. And there are so many families that suffer alcoholism that their parents didn't drink. But if you look up the family tree far enough, there was somebody who modeled alcoholism.
100%. Yeah.
Someone who modeled, and so generations later can be suffering alcoholism without alcohol being in the picture.
The most common one, and this is through a process of like when a client comes in to sessions with me, I have a pretty deep assessment when my ears perk up that I think they may be affectionately what I would call Al-Anonic, right? And there's telltale signs, and I won't bore you guys with kind of the clinical aspects of it. But through the process of going through an in-depth family tree and some lines of questioning around control, anxieties, fears, resentments, these kind of things, major players start to present themselves when you get into the family tree. Oftentimes, yes, deeper into the generational lines, you will find a full-blown addict or alcoholic, which is it's a good place to start because you can identify the full-blown alcoholic. Even if they can't clinically, you can start to hold up the pieces to make sense of behaviors where they're like, oh, right? And as you build out from that, let's say it's 2 generations back, it wasn't their parents, but their grandparents, right? And you build it from there, you have to have the assumption instantly that if a matriarch or patriarch is struggling with some kind of addiction, it's trickled down somewhere. Right. Closer to your generation. 100%. It's not a guess. I just don't know who it is yet. Right. But let's try to find it. A lot of times it's aunts, uncles, cousins, that kind of stuff. The family tree trickles in a lot of directions. But you find them, I wouldn't say with ease, but relative ease. And I have a few clients who are like that right now where they were presenting so hardcore with the control aspects of the disease that their lives were miserable and they didn't want to go to Al-Anon until it was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, my aunt was an alcoholic for years, caused devastation in our family. I don't know why I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't tell you before. It's like, well, you and I know why. It's like, this is the shameful side of our lives. Nobody wants to talk about that stuff because everybody's so concerned with things being perfect.
Well, and stigma, right? I keep coming back to that. Is society's view of the illness of addiction and alcoholism is so negative that people don't want to disclose. They don't want to have these open discussions. They don't want to, they don't want to say, hey, I'm a recovered addict or alcoholic. Or I have a family member. No one's standing around the water cooler at the office bragging about their son being in the 14th treatment center.
Yeah.
Right? They shouldn't hide it, though, because I guarantee you somebody else in that office has another loved one who's in rehab or has been through rehab or needs to go to rehab. And again, I'm using only substance use stuff, but this illness is so, it's a one of those hydras, the 5-headed, right? 5-headed dragon monster, whatever. You cut one head off and it grows back. And people just don't want to discuss this. This is just one of those no's, and it's because of stigma. If you're an addict or an alcoholic, you're a bad person. It looks like badness. It smells like badness. It's perpetuated in news, in the news. I mean, every facet of life looks at, especially in the West, addiction as you're bad.
Yeah.
When really it's just an illness. People who have diabetes aren't pigeonholed into, oh, you're one of those dirty diabetics, you know?
Yeah.
But stigma prevents these conversations from happening. Stigma, and quite frankly, obviously, you and I don't care about that, or we wouldn't be having this open platform publicly, on display. But I've never been ashamed of that, even after relapses, even after the admission of a suicidal episode. I'm not ashamed of that because other people think about it all the time. If you've ever thought, I don't want to wake up in the morning, that's suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. And it can be very passive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But
Well, you
we
know,
don't want to talk about it.
before I lose this idea too, from what you were sharing, Kendra, can you pull up a Google while we talk too, if I throw something at you? There's this concept, it's a philosophical concept and kind of like an overarching, I don't know, you could call it like maybe even a political concept, but the snake that eats its own tail.
Right.
Yeah. And Kendra, can you look that up, just the term for the snake that eats its own tail? I think that's a good representation of the stigma that exists in our society around addiction, is that we have a system that's been created to try to treat it, but it also within the process itself kind of eats itself, right? And gets caught up in recidivism where we need you because now it's facilitated jobs, right? Which yada yada. It just even the attempts to break the stigma. Did you find it, or did it just pop up with a bunch of pictures of snakes?
Both. Ouroboros.
Ouroboros. That sounds right.
Ouroboros.
Yeah, the snake that eats its own tail. Does it give a description there of like what it's referring to? Or is that just the actual concept of a snake eating its own tail?
Ancient symbol depicting a snake or a dragon eating its own tail. Western tradition and ancient Egyptian.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, essentially it's kind of this, the Ouroboros is kind of like, you want to do good and you're trying to do good, but the things that you're doing actually bring about poor consequences because it's not rooted in moralistic behavior, right? So we see that a lot in our society. A lot of people refer to the snake eating its own tail with modern day America, where people want a lot of equality and justice, but the behaviors in which they go about it causes buildings to burn down and people to get ran over by cars and people shooting each other. And, it's the way in which we go about it is history repeating itself. This has happened in every major society everywhere, where a slow degradation of moralistic behavior leads to outcomes that are less than desirable. Right. And the conversation around addiction and the family diseases is very much that at a societal level, is that, well, we want these people to recover, but look at that piece of shit. How come you can't get it?
Right.
And here's an interesting part too, is the family member who was affected is like, I felt a lot of guilt around it. And this is, at a societal level, there's a distinction between, or a confusion between guilt and shame. All right. The distinction that we would make is that guilt is I've done something wrong, and shame is the feeling of I am wrong. Well, then we take the concept of the family disease of addiction and we tell everybody that they are wrong for it, that this person is somehow bad and wrong for having an addiction, and you're somehow at cause and bad and wrong for impacting them in a way that would cause them to use a substance. And that's all wrong. What could be right is that there is some guilt in all of this for us because nobody wants anybody to suffer, right? And we feel guilty for having been a part of it, right? Or contributing to it. And that was a big one for me, is like, how do I go home and tell my family, who has been wrought and affected by the family disease of addiction, that I'm now going to this 12-step program with people who can smile and laugh and joke about it. And then I got to a point over years of doing it where I was just more willing to save my own ass than my face. I didn't care what anybody thought. I didn't care what family members thought about me going to recovery. Hey, look, if you got a problem with it, you spot it, you got it. You got something to say about it, you can ask me about my recovery, or else let's move on to a different topic.
Right.
know?
Well, and I think that's the key to being a recovered individual is that it's not the central point of my life. Like when I've recovered from a broken leg, I don't keep telling everybody I had a broken leg. Right? It's healed. It's okay, let's press on. And the snake eating its own tail, the imagery that's coming into my mind is the obsessiveness of the alcoholic and addict in his mess, right? The obsession of how to obtain, use, get away with more using, et cetera, et cetera. And then the snake eating its own tail is I get into recovery and it's a meeting a day keeps the drink and drug away. So my world that got really small from drinking and drugging doesn't get really that much bigger because I stay in these four walls talking about my feelings to a bunch of people that I may or may not intimately know. Right. The actions that I'm taking are almost as destructive. They're still, the family members are still not showing up for Christmas because they're at a Christmas marathon meeting. Or I don't feel good, I need to go to a meeting. I feel great, I need to go to a meeting. I really needed this meeting. The whole premise of Alcoholics Anonymous was for me to have an experience with God that was life-changing. And I could meet once a week.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose of that wasn't for me. It was for the newcomer. It was for the new man to know that there's a way out. Yeah. And the snake is eating its own tail in much of recovery land. And there are exceptions, pockets of enthusiasm everywhere. I know that Texas has a pretty strong recovery base that's firmly grounded in the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole book. But by and large, you're seeing discussion meetings that are talking about their own feelings and cheer people who are saying, hey, what's the topic today? And some newcomer pipes up who doesn't have a solution to their life, and we address feelings instead of a pathway of hope and recovery. And it's that snake eating itself again. We were supposed to have a life.
Yeah.
And not it just being restricted. There are so many people who are addicts and alcoholics that don't go on and get recovery. So you're talking about we'll say 50% of Americans in one form or another, not specifically substances, but wrestling with some form of addiction, obsessive behavior that's causing them or people around them harm. What percentage of those are getting help?
Well, it's abysmal. This was partly what my dissertation was on. It is abysmal. I dove into a very specific direction. My dissertation ended up being on the 3 years that the brain needs to heal after your last substance use. Just from like a post-acute withdrawal syndrome into extended recovery and what's happening in the brain. But when you dive into this research in any realm on addiction, you're going to run into the statistics, and you need to lay the framework for people to understand, what am I reading, what am I looking at, and the most alarming part of doing addiction research is realizing how abysmally small the percentages of people who seek and actually receive quality support for the family disease of addiction. You're going to find abysmally small percentages that are identifiable on the substance side of things because the problem is in your face. You're going to find almost a non-existent percentage for the family members. You can get real nuanced and tricky and clever with it, which, I've learned to do over the years of researching these things, is like there are other ways to find the percentages of people who are receiving some kind of support because they seek it. Same as like when the addict comes in, they're not typically looking online for services, saying like drug addiction services. They're looking for brain fog or fatigue or stress and these kind of things. The family member is very similar, right? They're looking for issues in relationships, and they're looking for issues with stress, or they're looking, they're having issues holding employment, these kind of things. So you can find some nuance, but you can only get so far. in the distinction of actual statistics because it's not being tracked what the actual problem is. And this is a problem like when I talk about like with other therapists and train them of identifying at least some type of assessment in this realm, because I know a host of therapists that will never assess for the family disease of addiction. They don't even, they're not even going to tamper with it. It's not even a lack of understanding. It's a lack of willingness to just read the statistics on the sheer number of Americans who struggle with addictions, right? Which would then suggest that if it is 50% of the population, it's about 46.7% of the population struggle with some form of addiction, which is astronomical. Okay, well, what about the other half, right? We're all related to those people, aren't we?
Right.
Right. Well, that's a conversation that's taboo. It's like, well, I may be related, and I may have been in the room when they were watching porn. You know, it's like, okay, well, you were affected.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that's one like on the if we just carved out one more small piece of the pie of like sexual addiction, that's a massive percentage of the population and a massive problem and a massive relational problem, and it steals people's lives away from them, especially young men who have. Young men have a real power to affect a lot of relationships. And so this conversation gets really nuanced really quickly and very unmanageable, which is where stigma breeds. Stigma breeds in unmanageability. If you can sniff out unmanageability, you can find someone with a narrative that doesn't help. You know?
Right.
Yeah. I threw a lot of just
I'm at
general information.
I'm at a loss right now. I'm just thinking about. That's where I was going actually. That nominal piece of people or slice of people who are actually seeking help. That means that my world has gotten smaller,
Yeah.
not larger, and I think that we need to, as a society, not only embrace recovery, but to encourage experiencing this big blue marble that we live on.
Yeah.
I mean, to meeting makers make it. No, they don't. They make meetings, right? We recover by the steps we take, not the meetings that we make.
Yeah.
And I believe that yes, there's a lot of camaraderie. Yes, I have a ton of friends in recovery. My wife's in recovery. My daughter's godparent is someone who I've sponsored for 16 years. Yes, I'm affiliated and friends of people in recovery, but it's not my sole source of social interaction. Right? I have friends that I go to church with, friends that are they're parents of kids that go to school with us, with my kids. It's branching out, and so stigma prevents us talking about the problem. Recovery is a minor portion of the population, so it's less talked about. And then the whole reason that Alcoholics Anonymous remained anonymous was because when they started out, there was only, in the forward to the second edition, it talks about the statistics of the numbers and how many people were involved and how AA grew by leaps and bounds. But in the beginning, there was, at their pinnacle, there was like 800 people. How are 800 people going to answer the alcoholic problem in America? They had to remain anonymous or they wouldn't have a life. They couldn't go to the grocery store. They couldn't go to work without being deluged with thousands of requests to help my family member. But now we're not there.
Yeah.
And I don't speak on behalf of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am not a representative spokesperson. I have found my freedom through the 12 steps of AA, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, not on behalf of any 12-step fellowship. But it was meant to be more than what it is today. And I think, if we can help peel back another layer and open up some more doors to people to recover. If you don't have substance abuse issues, that's fine. If you're struggling with contentment and happiness based on the relationships in your life, you might want to look at Al-Anon, Codependence Anonymous, adult children of alcoholics or dysfunctional families, and get some recovery in your life and some personal freedom that allows you to be in relationship and know where you begin and end.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is hope. People do recover, and you can too. Another example on what you're talking about is like, it's like when people find out I'm a therapist. Oh, well, what do you think about? I don't know. Right. I'm a therapist. I'm not your therapist. And I'm not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I get paid a pretty decent premium to help people sort out their lives. And a big reason that's the case is because it takes a lot of time and a lot of figuring and a lot of research. And I put a lot of time into my clients, and it's nuanced, and I'll tell you what, man, it stretches your artistic and your intellectual abilities to be able to help someone see something in a proper light. So when someone, comes up and asks you for a solution, it's like, well, this is why I love recovery. It's like, I may not have the solution here for you, but I know where to point you. Right. And where I'm going to point, let's say a guy asks me to sponsor him, and I sponsor people for fun and for free. I point them internally to themselves. See, the biggest part of recovery I've always found, and this is true in any addict that everyone thought was just a degenerate beyond help, or on the Al-Anonic side is just a control freak who couldn't let go, is they always knew the answers. They just didn't quite know how in depth they knew the answers, or they didn't know they knew the answers. But once exposed to the information, people do amazing things in their relationships. They do very compassionate, kind, service-oriented things, and their life changes for the better. This isn't mystical. It's not magical. It's actually very practical. It's just a matter of willingness to do it. And thank God that the 12 steps, right? Like you were saying earlier, it's like, it's the steps that you take that help you make it. All right. If you don't do the steps, and we see these comments on the social media stuff all the time, like, well, AA doesn't work, right? And then you see a tirade of like, basically an admission of like why they left program. And it's like, well, yeah, of course you think it doesn't work, because you didn't work it, you didn't do it. I'm always a huge proponent of like, you can't say something doesn't work if you didn't try it.
Right.
Right. And this, unfortunately, is something that you can't just flippantly try.
Well, and again, there's the confusion, right? The confusion of the difference between AA, the program, or whatever AA it is, the program, and the fellowship.
Yeah.
And so many people just use the word program across the board ambiguously to, well, when I got to the program. They may have never done the program. They may have never worked steps 1 through 12. But they're saying, when I got to the program, the farthest you've ever gone is to meetings. And maybe you went to discussion meetings where you shared your feelings and your little struggles, and someone offered up their own little personal advice on how to overcome the struggle, but no one's getting free. The dependence becomes on people again. So now my life and all of my solutions depend on me going to a meeting so I can get them all solved, instead of going inward to where the solution is, which is, God in every one of us.
Yeah.
Right? That it's deep down within us.
Yeah.
That we find the source. And I love that you said that everybody knows their answers, because we do. We just have to get past our own fears and the fear of judgment, the shame, the guilt. I was thinking about what you'd said earlier about, being unlovable. And that was almost, if I was pursuing a love relationship, the relationship killer for me was when she said, I love you. The moment and that's all I'm seeking. I'm seeking someone to love me. I'm seeking someone to care about me. But the moment she said, I love you, it meant one of two things. Either she's dumb and can't see that I'm unlovable, or she's lying to me.
Yeah, she wants something from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way that what she's saying is the truth. And so many people that I work with feel the same way about themselves.
Yeah.
They're seeking acceptance. They're seeking, the fullness of Maslow's needs chart in their life, self-actualization included, right? The sense of community, the sense of belonging, but they struggle with their own internal demons that tell them they're not good enough. They don't deserve good things. If people only knew who you really were, they wouldn't be your friend or wouldn't associate.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are the big narratives. You hear those kind of things in therapy all the time, and it's what maybe we would call like in those dynamics, the payoff is a one up, one down, right? So if I inherently believe that I'm unlovable, I will seek to engage with a person in an attempt to get a payoff. My outward presentation of what I hope the payoff is for this person to love me because I crave it, right? But the actual payoff is for them to confirm that I'm a piece of shit. So I place myself on a pedestal. You see this with traditionally speaking, you see it with narcissism, right? You see it in mirrors and addiction, two different things, vastly different, but mirror each other, which is why a lot of people get the terms conflated. But that person puts themselves up of like, I'm great. I've got things under control. Yeah, no wonder you would want to be with me. I'm the greatest thing ever. But underneath is I'm a piece of shit. I'm unlovable, right? I'm not worth anything. And we continue to build ourselves up until that person knocks us off, right? Either through violence or chaos or actually just trying to genuinely connect, and we get to be the victim. And so what I always hold up is that the power dynamic in a relationship actually isn't in the one up position, it's in the one down. It's the victim, because now the payoff is once I'm in the victim role, I can knock you off of your pedestal. Right? I can make it your problem that you wanted to love me because didn't you know you have to be stupid to believe that I'm lovable? And the cycle goes round and round. This is why you see relationships that are constantly in that ambiguous state of, are we together? Are we not? But they treat each other terribly, and all the friends are saying, don't be with this person. It's that one up, one down dynamic where they're constantly trying to be in the victim role. I'm the one who's right. I'm the one who was hurt. But the payoff is always the underlying narratives. They're like, I knew I was unlovable, right? And one of the best ways to absolve it is to remember in relationships, if someone has to win, everybody loses. Right? It's not about winning. It's not about getting a payoff. It's not about the narratives being proven right or wrong. It's about connecting, and that's what recovery gives us.
Yeah, Cliff Bishop, God bless him. He's on to the next phase there, but he used to say to me, Don, you can be right or you can be happy. It's your choice. And I said, Cliff, I'm happy being right. And he said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. He said, no, you're not. Yes, I am. So see, he was proving the point.
Yeah.
Right. And I was not happy in that moment trying to prove that I was happy.
Yeah.
And I love what you were talking about. Basically the power struggle of relationships, whether I'm, of course this is a little bit more of a crass example, but about power struggles is, like in the sexual deviancy world, there's subordinates and there's dominants, right? And people think that the dominant, the one holding the whip or the riding crop, has all the power. But the person who's the sub, if there was no sub, if there was no subordinate, then there'd be no power for the dom. So they both have power. They both have the ability to get what they need out of the situation, or what they think they need out of the situation. Again, I know that was a pretty crass example, but if I fashion myself a savior, then I need a victim.
Well, I think it's also it's a timely example too, because you're also seeing increases in emergency rooms where during the process of a consensual encounter between two adults, it's often the female is coming in with airway restrictions due to asphyxiation, and, trachea injuries and things like that. They're coming in, having been beaten by their spouse or partner, during a consensual, adult interaction, under the guise of, there's something in society now where like, women will report they want those things a little bit more, right? In those encounters, but really what's happening is a real shift in shame and power dynamics. And so what's being actually requested through a respectful manner is being misinterpreted. And then if you get the wrong person who wants that, right, you get a lot of misrelations in those realms and people get hurt. But it's like, okay, yeah, that's a crass example. But another example is like when my best friend, before I was in recovery years and years ago, and we were just running around in our master's program, we're thick as thieves. But if my best friend had another friend, talk about a confirmation that I'm a piece of shit, that I'm not good enough as a friend. When I look at that now in my life, it's like, what is if we don't get to have multiple friends? That's where my mind was at. That's what the family disease of addiction taught me, is that it's all or nothing. It's black or white. You're in or you're out. Are your chips pushed into the middle of the table, whether we lose all our money? Because if not, then you don't love me and you don't care about it. It's just insanity. It's insanity. The reality is that I'm not going to push my chips into the middle of the table because I have bad cards and this isn't a good play for me. And if you want to shame me for that, that's fine. Right. I just hope you'll understand that I'm going to take care of me, and that's where a lot of people get themselves in trouble. It's like, it's all or nothing. I'm either all in on you or people are going to think I don't care. Okay. Well, who cares what people think? And I don't mean it from this flippant, like, well, don't care about what people think. It's like, care abundantly, right? In the right ways,
Right.
care for what people think. How about that? Not about what people think. Care for what they think, right? How can I use my talents, my skills, my love, my compassion to make someone else's life better in a way that I have the margin to do?
Packing into the stream of life is what the big book talks about, right? Pouring into somebody else.
Yeah.
When I'm doing that, I think we're properly using our will, our skill, our aptitudes, intellect, abilities, etc. It's for someone else, not ourselves. And I think that's where the sickness of the family illness comes from, is that I'm trying to solve my internal problem with some external relationship or substance or those types of external fixations that people have today.
Or there's a lot of options. Sure. There's a lot of options to fill the emptiness inside of you that will never fill the emptiness inside of you. It'll always expand the chasm. It opens the wounds, right? And if anybody ever wanted to understand what that feels like and what it means, it's like, just turn to your vice and then pay attention very closely how you feel is immediately when you stop. If if you're watching a movie at the end of the night, right, but you're afflicted with some of these issues, and as soon as that movie turns off and the room goes dark, how do you feel in here? Just run that experiment. I remember when I started to ask myself simple questions of like, what am I distracting myself from? I could get emotional on that because it's like, man, I was dreadfully and utterly and painfully lonely. I was terrified of it. I used to have these thoughts of like, man, I'm gonna die alone, an old man that no one gives a shit what's going on in my life. And here I was, a valuable member of my society, providing therapeutic interventions to people, and people seemed to really like it. And I didn't really want for anything in those realms. I had opportunities. People were pushing me up ladders because they respected my clinical ability. They respected the way that I moved and operated, because I do genuinely care. But man, tell that to me in a dark room when no one else is around, and I didn't believe any of it. What I believed was that I would be alone and that nobody loved me. It's just not true.
Right. If you go to sleep at night, is that when the loudest your mind is
Yeah.
thinking or talking to you?
Yeah.
Right. In that silence, is it turbines or is it peace?
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny how if you took substance off the table, how our issues line up.
Yeah.
Right? Like the things that you were talking about, being unlovable or feeling like I remember the first corporate job that I had. Now I say high school dropout. I was kicked out of high school and asked not to come back. But without a GED, I got in with a company, an IT company, and I grew with them very quickly, very rapidly. So by the time I was 24 years old, I was doing very well for myself. And I remember going through, this is when 3-piece suits were still cool, right? And attache cases, briefcases. And I'd be walking into the office and just thinking, these people have no idea who they're relying on. They have I am worse than a wolf in sheep's clothing, because a wolf at least knows who he is. I knew you didn't know who I was, because there's no way you would give me this much authority and responsibility. And not thinking that I deserved it, and striving even harder to prove to the world that I did, that proved to the world that I mattered. And it didn't matter how much I poured in, it didn't fill that hole. It didn't ever go, you know what, Don, you have arrived.
Yeah.
You now have peace. There's nothing else that you need to seek to distract you. And I still, even today, I start to doom scrolling, and I have to intentionally, I'm not even interested in what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Not even interested remotely.
Yeah.
And it's just a distraction of connection with myself, with my God, and with the people around me.
Yeah.
I had someone recently tell me that I asked them, why do they fake laugh around me? And they said, well, because you'd get mad if I didn't laugh at your jokes. Huh. My dependence on my humor. If you didn't think I was funny enough, tall enough, fast enough, good looking enough, charismatic enough, talented, skillful, whatever, you couldn't criticize me in any way, because it was just this huge violation. When today I am very happy to look at the comments that are being left. I'm very happy to evaluate their validity in my life, whether it's something that I need to look at or that somebody else has got some serious issues that they need to work through. So leave your comments. We'll let you know which one you are.
Yeah. For free.
Are you kind and helpful in a loving fashion, trying to help someone get better? Or are you stepping on their head to try to elevate yourself? And
it's interesting too, because I'm nodding along as I'm listening to you, because I've had these felt lived experiences in a different way, right? It's like the cord is the same, the thread underneath. I felt these feelings, and I felt it, interestingly. It's like, I clean up my life after getting arrested at the end of high school. I lose some baseball opportunities, but bounce back and gain some others. And then I start this process. Really, what I didn't know then that made more sense in my late 20s was really leaning into and embracing the family disease. I was lost in it. And what I was trying to do was go out into the world and be the best. right? The next accomplishment. But really what then it became was, if I accomplish this next thing, I'll achieve the love from the people who are supposed to love me. It took me a long time to understand that. But then what I can share is that it didn't matter. The bachelor's degree never mattered. How far I went in baseball and I pursued it and played at a high level, that didn't matter, right? From a dad who vicariously probably lived through my baseball career, didn't matter. Didn't win any type of approval for that. A master's degree didn't matter. A doctorate degree didn't matter. Accolades for my dissertation didn't matter. Publishing a book didn't matter. Running my own business doesn't matter, right? None of it won what I thought it would win.
Right.
And my recovery, God gave me everything I needed without any of that. My only qualm is that I wish I would have learned that when I was 17.
Right.
Because I was presented with it at that age, because of the nature of some of the things that got me in trouble. I was presented with solutions. I said, "No, baseball's my solution." That's how full of shit I was. But I was young, right? Obviously, there's a lot of figuring out to do, and we all have to figure these things out. But I just resonated hugely with what you were sharing. Is we all strive for these massive payoffs, missing the biggest one that was afforded to us at birth. All right? That you are free, and that you are loved, and that there is abundance for you to have, but it's not man-made. You can't physically put your hand on it. And so that may sound insane to some people, but what sounds insane to me is clamoring all over each other, trying to obtain things that don't go with us at the end.
Yeah.
I'm done with all that.
Yeah, I mean, if the Amazon guy knows you by your first name,
Yeah.
you're not filling the hole with those Amazon boxes.
Right.
Right? Like, because then there's on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And it's just this constant attempt to fill the God-sized hole in me without God. Right? And nothing will ever do it. No amount of relationships. My validation came from being in relationship. So if I didn't have a woman, I would get a woman. And even one who would take me in my mess, which isn't someone that I typically would want to bring home to mom, that validation still never got to where you were saying, to where I felt like I mattered, like genuinely mattered. And now, knowing what I've learned today is that I matter to one, and that's God, right? And I matter to my family. I matter to my the people that I work with, professionally and personally. And my value doesn't depend on them, but it's evidenced by them.
Yeah. Because I matter to me, and I'm going to live in accordance, all right? That I'm actually worth taking care of. There's this one credence with a group of men that I run with in some of the recovery circles of, it works if you work it, and I'm worth it. I remember when I would first hear it, I'd had some recovery under my belt by the time, so I'll do it, I'll nod along, and that sounds cool, sure, great, right? Whereas years and years ago, I'd have been like, this is the corniest crap,
Right.
But then, you start doing it, and it started to mean something for me. It's like, no, I am worth it. All right. Doesn't matter what anybody would ever look at me to tell me that I'm not. I don't believe that anymore. All right. Because the part of me that was so big that would have obstructed my life, that believed I was unworthy, has just melted over the years. I may scrape and bump into it sometimes. I make no guarantees as to what comes out of my mouth when I do.
Right.
But I know this is that nothing will come out of my mouth today that will be so egregious that I cannot clean it up.
Right.
And that is what I will hang my hat on at the end of the day.
And that's that taking that personal responsibility that you were talking about. You're no longer a victim of yourself.
Right.
right? You're not a victim of your circumstances. You're not a victim of your relationships. You're not a victim of your health. You're not a victim of, you're just not a victim. Yeah. And as long, the horrible thing about being a victim is that it wasn't your fault and you don't need to change. Now, there are certainly things that I was a victim of that weren't my fault. But if I stayed in that victim stance, I would never have to have changed. And once I start to take personal responsibility for myself and remove myself from the martyr role, from the victim role, then I can actually tap into real and genuine power.
Yeah.
Real and genuine value. But I can't change if it wasn't my fault. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why? Yeah. Why were you in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah, and it's like, for the everyday average American, it's like, just remember that that's the narrative every time a cop on a Saturday night is driving someone to the station who's in the back seat cuffed. It is full of why everybody else is.
Me?
Yeah, I mean, God, it was their fault and they did this. It's like, that's every cop Saturday night, man. We don't need to be that person. Another place we'd relate on that topic is with every parent out there who's ever had to raise a kid to try to walk them away from a denial of accountability. Kids don't know any better, right? So you've got to teach them accountability, and you'll hear every excuse under the sun as to why their sibling is the one to blame. When the reality is you're the one who threw the fist. You know?
Right.
It's like, hey, man, it's all good. You're learning. But what we need to also learn is that, go figure, all the research shows that people don't like those who don't take accountability. They actually really dislike it. And they have a real desire to connect with people who are genuine and honest, right? And trustworthy. And if we could just remember those pieces, you don't have to get it right every time. Even in the major leagues, people who strike out 7 out of 10 times are legends, right? So 3 out of 10, buddy. Let's get it. You know? And I try to remind myself that it's like, I'm going to make more mistakes than I get right, but you better believe I'm going to step up the plate and try to get it right. I mean, if I can go 4 for 10, great. You know, we'll see how it goes this week.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, could you imagine if there were statistics on how many at-bats we actually have had? Yeah. I mean, just today. Because I don't know that I'd be getting 3 out of 10 right now.
Yeah, me neither. I'd be. I think the way I put it is like, man, you know, I'd probably make it to the show, but I wouldn't make the Hall of Fame. But I always like those analogies too. Baseball, right? For me, I played for 19 years. There's a lot of little nuggets of wisdom in there for life. You know, you show up, you take the reps, right? You put in the work. You show up, you put your effort in. It's about the fundamentals, right? No one cares about. You know, it's like Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant wasn't a legend because he could do 360 dunks. He was a legend because he would show up before anybody else and leave after everybody else off that basketball court. And nobody could outwork the guy. That's what made him a legend, right? And so when we take that perspective, like you're saying, and practicing the principles in all our affairs, it's like, well, practicing isn't sitting in the meeting every single day. Practicing is having to implement my 10th step at the end of the night after I treated someone that I love terribly, and then actually circling back and looking in someone's eyes and saying, I need to make an amends.
All right, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Here's what I did wrong, you know, and taking accountability and ownership of my actions. Yeah. Instead of laying up in that, well, if you hadn't have said this, I would have never said that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or look at all this that I do. How could you possibly, right, treat me this way? You know? It's like, well, one, they're human too, and nobody's treating you some kind of way. That's I think my favorite part of like realizing my own self-righteousness is life isn't happening to me. Life is happening around me, and I'm choosing to take it personally.
Right.
And it was just a simple shift, right? It took a long time, right? But that's just such a simple shift of like, life is happening around me, as such it does for everybody. And I, for some reason, am choosing to take it all personally, right? When it
except for my own mistakes,
right? That's not personal.
I mean, I didn't mean to do it. Yeah. My intention, I want the world to judge me by my intentions, and they're judging me by my actions. Right. right? And I mean, I never intended to break my mom's heart, but I sure did break it. You know, I didn't intend to destroy some of the sweet relationships that were in my life, but I sure did do those things. And you know, I I thank God for the 12-step program, because not only does it allow me to take personal responsibility, but as you said, I also get to clean it up. I don't have to clean it up. I get to.
Yeah.
And it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be transparent and own my own mess. It's a privilege to talk about the victory that there was in overcoming even the suicide stuff. You know, there's victory in that. And I know that, well, my hope is that someone else out there can identify with that and go, well, gosh, if that guy can do it, certainly I can do it.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not an exceptional person, by the way. I am unique and all those wonderful, you know, snowflake and whatnot. But
You're totally a snowflake.
I mean, we all are, right? There's no identical snowflakes in the world, right? But you know, at the end of the day, I'm just another bozo on the bus, right? I'm just another guy who is trying to make his way through this life the best way that he can, contributing to life, experiencing it, and being happy, you know, reasonably happy. I like the Reinhold Niebuhr prayer, the whole serenity prayer, not just the one stanza, but the stanza at the bottom saying reasonably happy. I just want to be reasonably happy, not ecstatic, not through the roof. And I think that's a really great goal to achieve, is not based on external circumstances or substances, or just at the end of the day, do I feel good about what I've accomplished, who I've impacted, how I've helped, how I've participated in this life? If not, there's some things I need to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
Yeah.
What I hope you guys hear today, following along, is that Don and I, at the societal view, sit on two opposite sides of the aisle as it pertains to the family disease of addiction. But my goodness, if you just didn't have the perspective of the full conversation, you'd think we were talking about the same exact affliction. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a raw, truthful expression of the family disease of addiction. There's all kinds of research, there's all kinds of clinical ways you could look at it, but the way that truly matters is when two people afflicted by the same issue sit down to talk. And what you find is that we've been through the same shit. Same, different. If you're looking for support, if you relate to these things, I would highly recommend that you reach out to us. You'll see the websites for both Dawn's peer-led inpatient program in Hubbard, Texas. We can get you connected with them. Whichever website you click on, you can find Dawn's program if you're needing residential care. If you're needing a higher level of care, maybe you're coming out of a residential, you've detoxed, you're looking for your next steps, we could either get you set up with Dawn's program, or you can do our IOP. We're looking for our inaugural 12, right? So we're our founding 12 for our IOP. It's a brand new medically integrated program here at Breaking the Cycle Therapy. We're looking for 12 people to commit to a 90-day program. If you think that's you, if you're looking for the most affordable IOP program you're ever going to find in the state of Texas, contact us. We'll help you. We'll get you set up. We'll get you the medical care as well that you need, along with the clinical support. Reach out to us anywhere in the world. Give us a call. We're here to support you. Anything else you'd share, Don?
No, I just want you all to know that there is hope, that there is a way out of this, that you're not alone, that if you're watching this with someone else or you're sharing it with someone else, that they too are facing their own struggles. And whether you want to call it the family disease of alcoholism or addiction, or just you know, a soul loneliness, you know, a loneliness of the soul, or some form of brokenness that you just don't feel like you quite measure up, there is hope. There is a way out. And like Alan said, please reach out. We'll be glad to connect you. I don't believe that, you know, either of us think that we're all things to all people, that we're the answer for everyone, but we sure know a lot of great resources and can help connect you to some.
Breaking the Cycle is a self-supported podcast, so we would appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe, share it with your grandmother. Let's spread the word. We love you guys. We will see you next week with another episode. Take care.
Peace.